Kurt is an expert on performance improvement and committed to helping individuals, businesses, and educational institutions realize their potential and achieve the highest level of success possible. Kurt has also worked with a wide variety of clients, including the University of Virginia, startup technology firms, senior-level financial executives, nonprofits, state councils, professional athletes, and artists. And I'm going to give you a heads up that he is speaking today, so you are all intended to know. All right, let's welcome Kurt.
Hello.
It should be working. There you go. Whether you want to be or not.
Good morning. What's the first word that comes to your mind when you think of Gandhi? Peace. Thank you. Okay, that's mine. Probably not most of you because you got this big breakfast. Okay, but peace. How many thought peace? That's what most people think. Okay, wise guys like ourselves, we think hungry. All right. What about confident? If you know anything about Gandhi, okay, extremely confident in order to do what he did and lead a nation and do so through nonviolence, you have to have an extreme amount of confidence. But that is, I've never had anybody say to me, oh, that's the first word that popped into my head. Okay? So for leadership, he's a perfect example of what you would call professionally confident and personally humble. And I think that is the perfect combination for a successful leader. Okay? No one likes someone with that overconfident attitude. Okay? And he didn't have that. Okay? It was personal humility, and I think that's something that is extremely successful, so I wanted to point him out as an example for leadership. So when you think about that in a business term, personal humility but professional confidence, I went to a high school, a private high school in New Jersey, and the headmaster of the school, Monsignor, who is probably now only in his 70s, but when I was a student, I thought he was in his 90s. Old football player, walked very slow, you know. I remember seeing him in the hallway, and I remember seeing him pick up trash. And my first job, I worked at that school. And I saw the same thing when I was a student as when I was on staff. And it struck me as like, well, why would the headmaster have to pick up trash? You know, we've got custodians, and we've got other teachers, and you know, and it just struck me as he was very professionally confident. He was a great speaker. He inspired a lot of people, but it wasn't above him to go and do the smallest little thing that showed he had pride in what he did. Fast forward about 7 years, and I'm teaching at a school in Virginia, and there was a assistant principal who thought she should bring her dog in to school, regardless of if anybody didn't want that or was allergic or what have you. So the dog, not being trained, used to go to the bathroom in the hallway. Okay? Who do you think cleaned it up? Not her, okay? She would call the janitor and say, oh, there's a mess in the hallway, you have to clean it up. Okay? Exactly. All right? So when you talk about the opposite, okay, those are perfect examples. Does anybody like somebody like that? Do you want to see someone in a leadership position that thinks they're better than you? Right? No. So that's what's really important. And I want to thank all of you for being in the field that you're in. Have you ever heard the quote from Jack Welch, CEO of GE for a long time? He said the head of HR should be the second most important person in the organization behind the CFO. Okay, I completely disagree with him. I think you should be number one. All right, because businesses are about people. Regardless if you work in the technology field and there's all kinds of automation and that's happening more and more every day, it's about the people that you work with. And I seriously, genuinely want to thank you for doing that. So one of the most important things about leadership, in my opinion, and I think we can lose sight of it because things move so fast that we become reactive, is purpose. So why are you here today? Right? Things move so fast. How many people have to race out of here and do something for their job? Onboard somebody, fill out some paperwork, right? How many of you were up late last night watching the game? Okay? So you've gone from watching the games and not getting enough sleep to coming here, okay? You're trying to do stuff while everything's going on. You're racing out of here. We don't really have a chance to stop and breathe and be proactive and consider our purpose. So I would say right now, if I'm the best speaker or the worst speaker you've ever seen, take the next 40 minutes and learn one thing. Have a purpose for being here. What am I going to use today to make my life a little bit easier? I'm not saying you should sit there and be completely selfless, but my purpose is that I like people to be happy and successful. I like to make people's lives a little bit easier. I like people to love their job and not feel like it's work. Okay, so hopefully I can impart on you at least one thing today that you can incorporate into your purpose in order to be a successful leader. How do I do that? I have certain core values. The central core value I have is leadership. I think it's extremely important. It's been hammered into my head since I was probably 3 or 4 years old by my father. Wouldn't even let me get a t-shirt if a bunch of other people had it. You know, Dad, I want that t-shirt. Oh, you can't have that t-shirt. Everybody's got that t-shirt. Be a leader, not a follower. You know, if I could rewind time, like, Dad, I'm 5. You know, it's not that big a deal. Okay? But it set me on a path towards leadership. And then I had people in my life that inspired me, coaches and teachers and relatives and whoever, okay, and kept me moving in that direction. And the other things I have that support that are up there as well. On the table, or maybe you got it via email, there's one sheet and it has 4 examples of leadership. If you don't have it, you can use one of the pads, the pens, your brain, your tablet, whatever you have, your phone. I just think it's good when we talk about purpose to have a framework that we want to think of. And it's something you can take with you as a reminder. All right? If you're a leader in HR, there was a leader in your life at some point that inspired you to be in a leadership position. So I want you to think of 4 examples. And a great way to become a leader is to do what the good leaders do and to do the opposite of what the bad leaders do. So think of a public figure that you look up to. All right? Use that as an example. That's easy to have a discussion with someone else. Oh, I look up to so-and-so. Well, why? Here are their leadership characteristics. And over the next 35, 40 minutes, okay, you can just jot down, oh, well, here's why I actually like them. Because you don't always think about it, right? You think, oh, well, this person's a leader. Peyton Manning's a leader. Cam Newton's a leader, okay, whoever. Politician, religious figure. Oh, I got a grin. I don't know. Okay. A bad manager you have had. I know nobody in this room has ever had a bad manager before, I'm sure. Okay. I'd be hard-pressed to find somebody who hasn't had a bad manager because leadership is difficult. It's very easy just to be reactive and be the person that calls in the custodian to clean up the mess that you made. A good leader you have had, a good workplace leader. How many of you have had a good leader? How many of you have had more bad leaders than good leaders? That's most people. Okay? That's most people. Leadership is hard. Any Batman fans here? Used to be. Okay? It's a lot harder to be Batman than it is Robin. All the pressure's on you. Okay? But if you know comics at all, Robin evolves into a leader of his own, and at some time actually becomes Batman. And that's what I think good leaders strive to do. And then think of yourself. You're in a leadership position. What are your good characteristics? What are the things you think you can improve on? And try and mirror some of those things today. When I speak at colleges, a lot of the times they ask me, oh, the students want to know about your leadership journey. Okay? Yes. Oh, they know the theory, they know this, they want to talk about your leadership journey. And the first person that ever said that to me, I kind of, I was glad I was on the phone with them because I kind of made that face, oh, my journey. And then I thought about it, and it's like, well, it really is kind of a journey. Starting from when I was 4 and couldn't get that t-shirt, up to when I was, captain of my sports team or, became a parent or whatever the case is. And if you really want to grow as a leader, you never stop. You never stop trying. And it's important to reflect on the things that you did right. So not going after a fumble, is that going to make him better? Is he going to think about that and see that as a way to improve himself? So when I was a teacher, they tell you 2 things in teaching. Stay a chapter ahead of the kids, and don't smile until Christmas. Okay? I got hired for one job, and I was psychology major, did some graduate work in psychology. They brought me in to teach International Baccalaureate Psychology. Well, they only had 3 sections. The teachers had to teach 6 classes. So what are the other 3 going to be? Oh, we don't know. We'll figure it out. I was like, and this is when I was relocating from New Jersey to Virginia. I'm like, I'm moving. I'd kind of like to know, what I'm going to be teaching. Oh, it'll be world history or U.S. history. I'm like, I never taught those subjects? Oh, that's not a problem. I said, okay. And the guy said to me, and I'll never forget it, he said, I believe you hire the heart and you can learn the content. And that stay a chapter ahead of the kids thing, I've had students tell me, oh, you're the best teacher I ever had. I don't have a lot tell me that I was the worst. I'm sure I was for some, but they don't tend to voice their opinions. But I have students that tell me that, and there were years I was really good, and there were years that I look at them and I'm like, are you serious? Like, I didn't know what I was doing, But what I did do is I developed a rapport with my students. I taught high school, and I treated them like adults, and I told them I was going to do that, because I said, I know you want to be treated that way. And they responded. I would ask them day 1, day 2, it wasn't, here's your book, write the number in it, here's your homework, it was, hey, what's your name? What do you want to do? Do you have a goal for this class? Do you like this subject? And students would tell me, no one's ever asked me these questions before. Okay? I wasn't the best at content. Far, far, far from it. But there's nothing that would stop me from developing that sense of rapport. Keep the human in human resources. People love to know that they have a human resource, that there's someone they can go to that actually cares. Okay? Because our jobs, you may love your job, and other people may hate it in the same organization. If you've ever fantasized about how you would quit if you won the lottery, you were actively disengaged, and you hated that job, and it's hard to get up in the morning and go there, and if you can make it a little bit easier for those people, it's a great thing to do. Has anybody seen this picture before? Yes. Okay, a couple people. This gentleman was teaching a college class. Most of his students were people going back to school, trying to better themselves. A lot of single moms, hoping to get that degree that would allow them to have that next level job and support their family. And he actually encouraged these women to bring their children to class if they couldn't afford daycare, couldn't find somebody, which I think is terrific. Well, this one little boy started really fussing, screaming, crying. Okay? So the woman started to leave. And he said, no. And he took the kid and he taught the rest of the class with the child in his hands. And because of the novelty of that, the child stopped crying. So when I first went on my leadership journey, okay, the first real quote I heard about leadership that resonated with me was that managers do things right, leaders do the right thing. And I was like, oh, wow, that's a great quote. And the more I thought about it, I was like, well, that's kind of a cop-out. What about finding a way to do both? And I think that's what the best leaders do. That's what he did. His job as an instructor is to reach as many students as possible. You can't let one get in the way of the learning for 29. Okay? So it would have been very easy for him to say, okay, could you please just, leave the class? And she probably never would have come back. And who knows what direction her life would take. But he found a way to marry both of those things, and that's what great leaders do. And people in the HR field have a little bit more power to affect that kind of change and be flexible. And that's one of the reasons I love talking to HR groups. So let's talk a little bit about what management is and how that differs from leadership. People quit their bosses, not their jobs. You've heard this before? Okay. How many of you have to perform exit interviews? Okay. Is it very often that someone comes in and just, I'm quitting because I hated this person and they're terrible? Most people don't, even if that's the case, because they don't want to burn bridges, right? What purpose is that going to serve? You still need that recommendation. So you smile, oh, I'm just off for better opportunities, or it's just time for me to make a change. Okay, you probably know the cliches better than I do. So we're not gathering that real information, so we don't know who is managing and who is leading. If someone is really driving people away and making them miserable. Well, why is management such a difficult thing? You guys are familiar with Peter Drucker? Okay, and Drucker didn't like the word managers. He used the word executives. He thought it was kind of a dirty word. You manage process, you lead people. Okay. So Seinfeld fans in here? Anybody? So there's a while where George is working for the New York Yankees, and his car breaks down at work, And his boss is the first one there in the morning, and Steinbrenner, the owner, is the last one to leave at night. And they see his car, and they think he's burning the candle at both ends, and he gets a promotion. Okay? And he's not even there. All right? Through your careers, how many of you know somebody that that's happened to? Because they've had their butt in the seat for a long period of time, they've been promoted. Okay? It's about presence, it's not performance. That's something that just drives me crazy, but it's a reality. So now you've got a person in a leadership position, and your boss, your direct boss, has more effect on you than anybody else in the workplace. And that can determine whether you love your job or hate your job. And you've got somebody who doesn't deserve to be there. So there's a good portion. Ted Williams, arguably the best hitter in Major League Baseball history, okay, not a very good manager or coach. He couldn't comprehend how somebody didn't see things the way he did. Like, how do you not see this? And it's like, well, you hit over 400 and you were like 23. You took 2 breaks to fight in wars and came back and still have some of the most amazing records of all time. Of course people don't see it your way, right? But, oh, well, he's really good at his job, right? Your lead analyst leaves. Oh, we need a manager of the analysts. So who do you pick? Your best analyst, right? Well, do they have leadership skills? Because what have you done now? You've lost your best analyst. You put somebody in a leadership position who might not want to be there, might not have the skills, and maybe you alienated somebody else who wants that role. But that's what typically happens because it's the easiest thing to do, and it's reactive. There's an emergency. So I do a lot about generational diversity management, and one of the big things is that there's all kinds of managers that don't manage anything anymore, because the baby boom generation was such a large population growth and you had so many more consumers. Now you needed people to manage. Your professors went from being in their 50s to their 30s. Your bank vice presidents went from being in their 40s to an average age of 26 years old. So now you have these, and does a company ever stop? Usually they don't, and go, well, do we actually need somebody in this management position? Or do they just go, well, someone left, now we've got to hire for this spot. And we've got to fill the position. But do you ever stop and actually think about, well, do we really need to fill the position? And then finally, being from New Jersey, I have to always plug my New York Yankees and Derek Jeter. He was on the team. The Yankees aren't like other teams where they just always pick a captain regardless of who's on the team and what the year is. He didn't ask for the role. Okay? They didn't give it to him because of his performance. They gave it to him because of his leadership abilities. And it was just like, hey, you know what? One day, you're the leader. That's what it is. And he got it on its own merit. How many of you played sports in high school or college? Did you ever play with somebody who, they were a great teammate, you really enjoyed playing with them, and then they were appointed captain and you couldn't stand them? Because it's, who becomes captain? Well, they've been on the team the longest and they're the best player. All right. Well, do they have any leadership skills? And now what do? They think, well, I have to be different. I have to be a leader. I have to distance myself. And that's not the case. One great thing that leaders know how to do is manage conflict and communicate effectively. Does anybody know who that is? Thank you, Sarah. Taft. Does anybody know anything about Taft's presidency? He was the last president to have, anybody fill in the blank? Facial hair. Okay? Most important part of his presidency. I told you I taught history. And I told you I did not study history. Okay? Why is 1913, okay, over 100 years ago, if I'm doing the math correctly, why is that the last time a president had facial hair? That's a weird thing, isn't it? Okay? But you won't see a president with facial hair. I would be very surprised if you did. Do you know why? Because they come off as over masculine and it doesn't resonate with a lot of voters, especially female voters. Okay? That's why. Does a mustache have any ability, does that give you any ability to be a better or worse president? If it did, Tom Selleck or Wilford Brimley or Sam Elliott would be president. And if it was Selleck, my mother would be very, very happy. But it's a reality. You know why? Because our perception is our reality. How we perceive somebody. When I talk to millennials and, oh, I can't find a job. Well, you walked in dressed like a schlub, you know. Well, what does it matter? That doesn't affect the way I'm going to do my job. You're absolutely right it doesn't, but it affects someone's perception of you. It affects how much you care, okay? And that's something you can help other people with, understanding that perception is reality. I'm sure there's people that come in your office and complain and they just don't see that it doesn't matter what the reality of the case is, it's how people perceive things. So, without thinking, don't be shy. I'm going to show you a picture of an animal. As soon as you see it, I want you to yell out what animal you see. We ready? We had enough coffee to do this? Okay, who said duck? Who said rabbit? Who said duck rabbit? Okay. You drink that beer, don't you? Yeah. If you said duck, how many of you can see the rabbit now? And vice versa. Okay? When this first happens and you're sitting there and you see rabbit and you hear a bunch of people yell duck, you know what your first thought is? What an idiot. How could they see a duck? It's clearly a rabbit. And the opposite. And now that you see both, you realize it's a matter of perspective. But does that matter? Think about that on a larger scale in the workplace, that some people see the duck and some people see the rabbit, and right away what we do is we assume the other person is wrong, stupid, fill in the blank with something negative. When in fact, all it is a different perception. Another one, person. Okay? Person. Yell it out as soon as you see it. Don't be shy. Wait a minute. Who sees Marilyn Monroe? Who sees Albert Einstein? They look a lot alike, right? Who sees both? If you're wearing your glasses, take them off. If you had glasses on, you took them off, did you see someone different? Okay? If you move around the room, you'll see something different. If you're in the back and you walked up, it might change for you. It's a test of nearsightedness. It's the two images of the two people imposed upon one another. Okay? Now that's a lot more than duck rabbit. Marilyn Monroe looks nothing like Albert Einstein. So even though we just did duck rabbit, okay? You heard somebody yell the opposite of what you yelled, and your first thought was, what an idiot. Okay? How could they think that? I could see the rabbit duck thing. All right, now one more. Just to prove that we're very stubborn people. Color. First color you see. Okay? Who sees black and blue? Who sees white and gold? Okay? I see white and gold. I was at my mother's house one day and I was looking at the TV from a weird angle when this was a big thing a few months ago, and I saw the other colors and I was like, oh. Now, I don't know if you took part in this, but if you were on social media at all, people, I think, got divorced over this thing, screaming at each other. How can you possibly see that, right? Because our perception is our reality. But the key really is, what is our learning opportunity? The best thing that came out of this for me is, in going through all this stuff, there was this great article I came across about autism. And it was, when whatever you see, okay, and you've got 10 people around you seeing the opposite, imagine that's almost everything of every day, and that's kind of what it would be like to have autism. To see things through a completely different lens. And I thought, wow, what a great learning opportunity. Okay? I took something that was silly, a little social media battle, a silly dress, okay, and turned it into a learning opportunity. That is a huge key to conflict resolution. Okay? And that's something that is HR, whether you like it or not, you have to do, right? Conflict resolution. Go ahead and use these examples. Okay? And people get all amped up, and then you draw the parallel. Well, don't you see how you're doing the same thing when you talk about so-and-so's work ethic? I presented to a company one time that was having morale issues. And when I really got going, I had a vice president interrupt me, and he said, well, Kurt, look outside. It's 4:30, and look how many cars are gone. And I said, oh, Costanza, right? So, and this was a company that had flexible hours. It had core office hours of 10 to 3. So I could work home in the morning, come in 10 to 3, work home in the evening. It had people on client sites. It had people who were full-time remote. And this man was judging productivity and how much someone cared about their job based on butts in the seats. Okay? So what is the perspective there? Now, he would come in late. So someone who was there 3 hours before he was and left early, he would sneer at. Okay? Needless to say, that company's morale did not go up. Carlin fans in here? All right. You ever hear a skit about idiots and maniacs? When you're driving, how many people have take 77? And someone goes flying past you, you know what you think? Look at this maniac, right? And when someone's going slow and you can't get around them, oh, what is this idiot doing? Okay? Because obviously you are the best driver. You're going the perfect speed, okay? Anybody going faster than you or slower than you is wrong. You are the one in the right, okay? Anybody from New Jersey here? You know the Jersey salute when you're driving? Okay. All right. You learn a lot of nice words in New Jersey when you're behind the wheel of a car. But is that the reality? Fastest I ever drove was 130 miles an hour. So everybody I zipped past probably thought, maniac, okay? I got a call, I was about 40 minutes away, and my mother said, I need to go to the hospital. She was having some kind of problem, she was in a lot of pain. So I hopped in the car, and I shot down, where's Rick? Is he still here? Okay, he's not here. Rick knows Route 80, because we're from the same area. And I did 130 until I got home. I made like a 30-minute drive in like 7 minutes, okay? It was outrageous. You ever almost get in an accident? Like a really bad accident? Do you drive fast after that? Or are you shaking and you're doing like 25 on the highway? Okay? Are you an idiot? No, not at all. The fundamental attribution error in psychology is this. It says that people attribute to the situation, okay, to the person rather than the situation. So, guy going fast is a maniac. He's not someone trying to help his mother. The person going slow is an idiot. It's not somebody who almost got in an accident because someone else was a maniac. And that's what we do. We make our judgments about other people. When you talk about generational, I'm doing a thing in Gaston County next week about managing millennials. All right, and that amazes me because we're doing an age thing. Imagine you take the word millennials out and put in a race or a gender. All right? That would fly with HR, right? That would get past legal? Okay? Yeah, I didn't think so. But that's what we do. We go, oh, well, this person screws up because of their, and we fill in the blank. Well, is that the case or is that the situation? Have you ever worked with somebody who was fantastic and they switched roles and they were terrible? Or vice versa? And you're like, wow, this person, it's like Jekyll and Hyde, right? It's a totally different scenario. That's because it's usually the situation and not the person. But right away we jump to the person. Right away we say, oh, they're an idiot because they saw the duck and not the rabbit, and vice versa. And really, it's the situation. The Monroe thing, it's where we're sitting. Okay? But we make these judgments. So I say keep that in mind. What's more important in a conversation, speaking or listening? Unless you're a professional speaker. The QRS method, okay, they did this in education. Anything you can make a little mnemonic of, put something in alphabetical order. This is a great way to actively listen. It's a great thing you can just tell other people. Ask questions, repeat what they're saying, and summarize it. And that way you're sure of what they're saying. I'm one of the most literal people on the planet, and my wife will tell me to do something, and I'll do it literally, and then she'll shake her head. I was making a steak a few years ago, and I was following her directions because I could screw up a Pop-Tart. And I said, oh, it's almost there, it's not quite there. She says, okay, take it out and put it in the broiler real quick. I said, okay. So I got myself in a good athletic stance. And I opened it, I took it, and I threw it in the broiler real quick. And 20 minutes later, she's like, honey, what's going on with the steaks? I said, well, you didn't tell me to take them out. She said, I told you to put it in the broiler real quick. I said, I did. I got it from the oven to the broiler in like no time. Okay? I'm a literal person. So the best way to have a good conversation and to understand somebody, ask questions, repeat, summarize. You want to understand why my generation, Generation X, is cynical all the time? Okay? Ask them questions. Oh, why are you so angry? Well, I don't know, because my parents' generation just had to buy a house, do nothing, and sell it in 5 years, and they made a bunch of money, and I bought in 2006. Okay? Maybe that's part of it. How do you effectively communicate with others? How many people have told you don't be emotional? Keep emotion out of it. No, you want to communicate effectively, you've got to be emotional. All right? Think about the greatest speakers you've ever seen. Do they go up there and speak like this? If you watch TED Talks, it's someone who is emotional about something. You have to be rational too. You can't just go up there and start being crazy. But be rational and support that with your emotion. People are inspired by that. Okay? Barack Obama, if you like him, if you hate him, you can't deny that the guy's a great speaker. And he could speak about something, you're like, wow, that's awesome. And then you go on social media and you go, oh, I can't believe, what's the thing going around now? Obama, he can't get the cookie and the milk. Have you seen this? It's a little GIF. It's Barack Obama, and he's trying to dunk a cookie in milk, and the cookie doesn't fit in the glass, and then he goes, thanks, Obama, right? Because people blame it on him. So even if you don't like him, you see him speak, you go, wow, that's inspiring. Because he uses rationality and supports it with a strong emotion. Anybody you've seen who's a public figure, so that first activity we did, okay, if they're a leader and they're in the public eye, they probably are rational, or at least to your point of view, they're rational. And they support that with a strong emotion. So you want to make these two people that can't stand each other and are on the same team, you want to get them to get along, be rational, but support it with your emotion. And then they go, wow, this person actually really cares. It's not just, HR rhetoric. There's really something to this. Be present. Be in the moment with somebody. Don't bring up, stuff from the past. Wait, what were you saying? Okay. You have teenagers? Play video games? Okay. That's the opposite of being present. Be clear. Honey, when I say put it in the broiler real quick, I mean put it in the broiler and leave it there for about a minute or two and then take it out. And be specific with what you want. Very few people are willing to ask for what they want. I want the job. You guys do interviews? Okay. Would you say a large portion of people actually go in and specifically say, I want this job? Or do they just interview and at the end, do you have any questions? No, I'm pretty good. Okay. Do they want this job? Have they shown any emotion? Okay. Motivation. What do you see here? Maslow. Okay. This is a perfect way to motivate people. Find a way to motivate your staff even when things are bad. How many of you work for companies or have worked for companies that haven't really bounced back since the recession, or have bounced back but still use those rules? Oh, we don't need to give raises because people, they stop getting used to them. This is where we're at. Regardless of generation or what your position is or what your attitude is, if we can't put food on the table, we are in a bad mood at work, no matter what you do. Okay, you could be a professional athlete, and if you can't pay your bills, which I don't know how that happens, you're not in a good mood. If you have to race out of work to go to your second job, no matter how great your first job is, you're not in your good mood and you're not giving the best of yourself. And then it goes up the chart. We can't worry about having these great initiatives, and I don't understand why our employees are mad. We have all these training budgets and these learning development initiatives, and we did the retreat and the trust fall. We did the trust fall, guys. Doesn't that solve everything? It all starts here and works its way up. Are there differences among generations? Absolutely. Some generations want money more. Some want time. Millennials will ask what your volunteer policy is. Okay, so there's different things, but it all starts here. If I'm not making enough to, have the basics, then I can't worry about being my unique little snowflake. Human nature. This is one of the easiest ways to motivate people. Don't go against human nature. You know why most of us like a cupcake better than broccoli? Because when we were cavemen and food wasn't just